And we're
Awesome.
recording.
All right, and everyone is here. Yeah, I'm pretty excited for these demos today because it's kind of off the beaten path of Collab Lab. So yeah, how did everyone's week go? I know there's a lot of stuff going on. Any highlights or like difficulties that you want to pick out before we start demos? Everyone's good. We can also just go into demos. That's cool. Let's see. Anyone? Anyone want to go first? Or I can. Eden?
Yeah, we can go first.
All right, Eden and Alex. Let's see it. Eden and Alex, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? Cool. All right. Yeah, I'll hand it off to you.
Cool. So this week, our issue was basically just restructuring the database and refactoring our code. And this is something actually we worked on a little bit last week during office hours and got help from EJ and Terry as well. So we ended up restructuring our Firestore database so that we have our collection and then we have all of our tokens as documents. And then before, what we had was tokens as documents, and then we had, here, let me see if I can find an old list, and then we had all of our items inside of a collection. But now we have our tokens as documents, and then we have an items collection, and then we have all of our items as documents over here. So what we ended up doing is, let me see, in our Firestore list, we ended up making it into importing a Firestore collection versus a Firestore document, which we previously had, and then being able to use that functionality to refactor some of the functions that we had for this Firestore database. And then I will quickly say we also, we did want to kind of try to find a way to sort using order by with Firestore collection, but we weren't quite able to figure that out, and we weren't quite able to figure out how to sort by multiple fields in the Firestore. But so we ended up keeping our original sort function from last week. And then for refactoring our code, I think Alex is going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So for refactoring a code, essentially what we had to do was we had to rewrite or refactor all of the functions that were related to the database. So that included the delete item function that Eden's showing here. And for this, we still use the method provided by Firestore, but instead of deleting a specific field, we deleted the collection instead, or the document instead, as opposed to deleting a specific field. And then with this delete method, we were able to chain a .den, which we refactored yesterday with the rest of the team to work with Terry and Gabby's reusable modal. And then we also refactored the purchase item function. And a lot of what we ended up doing was just further nesting into the database collection. So if you can see between lines 52 and 56, we're doing db.collection.doc.collection.doc a couple more times just to have the function work with the new database structure. And then I would say the last thing that, and then same for the duplicate item checking and the add item checking, you can see from lines 67 to 72 and 79 to 83, we've just had to change the way we're accessing the database as well. And as Eden was saying earlier, that was the the challenge with sorting, or the sorting was probably our biggest challenge, but with EJ and Stacy's help this week, we were able to determine that we could just use the sort function that Gabby and Eden worked really hard on last week.
Yeah, and then I guess you can see everything works as it should. And the list still looks the way that it should, with the item that should be purchased soonest at the top, and so on and so forth, and never bought all at the bottom. So
I love it. Great work. That was a super challenging one. And office hours this week were so much fun. I learned so much from EJ on those office hours. So brilliant work on this one, y'all. I love, love, love that this went so smoothly after, like Jill mentioned, kind of going off the beaten path of what we usually do at Collab. So way to be a trailblazer and do this amazingly. So good job.
Yeah, that was very cool to see. And I think it's interesting because you're able to like change the way that the code was structured, but I don't know, was it difficult to think of it in the new way, or was it still pretty intuitive since you're refactoring things?
I would say it was some of the things that we were trying to do, or we're trying to refactor, were a bit more challenging than others, but for the most part, I think as soon as we were able to do like the first and second ones, the other ones came, were more intuitive. We were really stuck on that, trying to use the Firestore method order by and the React Firestore npm package. So I would say like that probably took the most time to figure out.
Yeah, sometimes it's like you want to try something, but sometimes you can just call it, and sometimes that's the best decision too. That's great. Yeah, were you saying something, Eden?
no, I agree. I think that that's like the bulk of our time was spent trying to figure out the order by function, and then also just trying to sort by like multiple fields and seeing if we could figure it out, but it just wasn't happening. So I'm glad that we were able to go to office hours and talk through it a little bit and just decide on keeping the original code that we had.
Totally. Yeah, that's great. Awesome. All right, well, thanks for the presentation. Terry and Gabby, you want to take the reins here?
All right. So our issue this week was we're creating a reusable modal to replace all the alerts and default dialog windows that we had throughout. And we're basing it off of the delete modal component that was created last week so that it could be used for everything. And we also made sure it was accessible using what's it called? VoiceOver. So this is what it looks like. Well, this isn't what it looks like, but if you hit join existing list, it's going to pop up enter a valid token, as opposed to the alert that used to pop up. If you do the wrong token, just like with the alerts, shopping list does not exist, try again or get a new token. You successfully join a list, you can, well, let's focus on the easy ones. When you add something, it's been successfully added. If for whatever reason something broke, it would say, not you, it's us, we broke something. When we want to delete something, this one was actually the more challenging one to figure out, to actually blend them together. But it says, are you sure you want to delete nuts from the list? And you can still hit outside like before, you can hit no like before. I'm gonna hit yes, and it will delete. And just like last week, it also deletes from the Firebase as well. I'll just let y'all trust that that works. And code-wise, we create a bunch of states. So we have, if the modal's open, modal label if, and we used the npm package called React Modal. So use this here, and we were to just kind of follow the documentation on how it goes. It was pretty straightforward on top of refactoring it with the modal that was already existing for the Leap modal. So following that, we have the modal is if it's open, the modal label, which is like the ARIA label, the message, which is what it's going to actually display on the front. Then we have a function to close it, and a confirm function, which is part of the delete function that we had to refactor a bit. So as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. Open, on request for closing. If it has a label in it, it'll use that. If not, it'll just say alert. Then this is styling, message, on click. That's just, oh yeah, here it is. So we have it set to make it so that we could use the delete and the alert. The alerts just say close, but then the delete has yes or no. So we have set if the confirm function's active, then make it say no. If not, then say close. And then also with that, if the confirm function is running, make it say yes, so that it will say yes and no, as opposed, or don't display this if there's no confirm function. So then it'll just show close. So then we went ahead and we added that to add item, and y'all saw here. Here it is. Okay, so yeah, so if it's a successful add, set the alert, which is what you guys saw here. This is what you'll see if there's an error. And then we also have it just a general catch error, which is doing the same thing. What else did we add it? We added it in join existing list, where you can see the set alert is here. And here for an invalid token, and we pass that through from home, which is where the modal is actually sitting at. That's where we pass that through. Then the fun one was delete, which is in here. And this one's a little more longer explanation. So I'll let Terry take over and he can get into that.
Yeah, so the confirm function we pass to each, we pass to the modal for each item. We are using a function that uses a closure to keep the item name, so that whenever a user clicks the delete button, the model appears with the appropriate confirm function to delete the appropriate item. And yeah, so one of the issues we were facing was that the I guess the function we were storing in state was automatically running when the user clicked the button. And we found out that it was because it needed to be inside of a function that returns that function. But EJ made some suggestions during office hours that we could have used like an anonymous function, like on line 155. But yeah, that was just another option of, or another approach to solving that problem. And I guess another issue we faced was that after the user deletes an item, like the model gets updated with the new message. The ARIA label wasn't being read for that one. We have some guesses that might be because a new model wasn't being created, it was just replacing the message of the existing one. So at the moment, the text just changes and it doesn't really update any screen readers. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what we have for this week.
Amazing work. I love seeing that reusable modal. We've talked about this endlessly a couple times, but that ARIA label issue is like one of the perfect things you can create a GitHub issue out of if you haven't already, that either in the future you could tackle if you had free time and wanted to, or you could have it sitting there as a form of documentation to display, when you go into interviews or whatever, showing that, accessibility is something that's really important to you and that you value and that you're documenting so that you can move forward with the build here. So consider doing that if you haven't already, and amazing work. I love it.
Yeah, very, very cool. Thank you so much. All right, and now I think we can hand it off to EJ. If your technology is complying with you.
I think I'm ready, yes. Thank you all for your
Awesome.
patience earlier. We will get through this together. I'll try sharing my screen. Everyone cross your fingers, because that could also go wrong. Who knows? Okay, I've got the presentation open. Step one, have your files ready, everybody. Learn from my mistakes. All right. And okay, so if I'm doing this correctly, y'all should see my Firefox window. Yes? Yes?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Seeing it.
Step number one, the most basic victory we can achieve in this mess. I'm going to go ahead and go into presentation mode and immediately lose track of everything. Please excuse me. Oh boy. I never use Google Slides, so I'm learning as we go here. We're going to figure it out. We're going to unshare and then reshare. Again, I apologize. It's one of those days, isn't it?
No worries.
Listen, it always happens when you're the one who's getting a demo. Never before then. All right, let's do it this way. I'm also down a monitor, which messes up how I would usually go through with some of these things. But now you should see this presentation, which hopefully looks a bit more legible. Is this a good size for everyone? Can we read this?
Yeah, I think it looks good to me.
Cool. If there's any point where it's too small, I'd be happy to stop and zoom in. So just come off mute and shout at me. Cool. So first, I should say that we are talking about accessibility today, the what, the why, and the how. And before we can begin talking about accessibility, we should define some terms. Accessibility, or rather the A11Y numeronym UCUC is called numeronym because it shortens the word using the number of letters between the beginning and end of the word. So in this case, there are 11 letters between the A and the Y in the word accessibility, and that's how we get A11Y. It's a useful hashtag that often specifically also means web accessibility. So if you see this hashtag on Twitter, people are often likely talking about browser stuff as opposed to game stuff or as opposed to built environment stuff. Now, to give a longer definition of accessibility itself, this comes from Wikipedia. I won't read the whole thing, and I will give you access to these slides once we're done here. But basically, web accessibility is the inclusive practice of ensuring that there are no barriers that prevent interaction with the web. Primarily, we focus on serving people with physical disabilities or mental disabilities or situational disabilities or even socioeconomic restrictions that prevent them from using certain tools or methods of accessing the web, such as high bandwidth connections. The goal is to ensure equal access, and all these things are important for all people. But again, I want to double back and say that we need to focus specifically, or especially rather, on people with disabilities because they are the most disenfranchised when we create things that are not accessible. The World Wide Web Consortium maintains a working group dedicated to web accessibility. They do a lot of the cool work that you see people discussing on the web. They make sure that browsers build things that work nicely with open standards for accessibility. Other important government bodies include in the US, Section 508, which is the one that requires all public funded agencies like government agencies or medical agencies or colleges to be accessible. And 508 aligns with the WCAG level 2.0. I'll talk about a bit more about that later. Now, some people access the web using assistive technologies. These things include screen readers, screen magnifiers, speech input devices, assistive keyboards and braille displays, let's see, sip and puff machines, foot pedals. Weston Thayer, in his Collab Lab talk dedicated to assistive technology, went into this in a huge detail, and I will go find that and bring it back up for y'all in case you missed it. It was very good. Popular screen readers include NVDA and JAWS, which are on Windows. They don't come with Windows, but they can be installed, and VoiceOver, which is built into macOS. Now, that's the what, and the other important piece, obviously, is why. Number one, we believe at the Collab Lab that it's the right thing to do. It's important to build things equitably and provide access. The moral compulsion is the most important thing to us, and second is the legal compulsion. You might be legally required to make your site accessible. This is something I learned actually from reading this slide for the first time, and it's really cool. More people in the US use websites with assistive technology than live in the entirety of Canada, which is wild. An estimated 20% of all people who visit websites have some sort of disability, which is pretty incredible. Making your pages more accessible for people with disabilities makes them more inclusive for everyone. Again, also true. There are little things that might bug you that could annoy your day or interrupt your ability to use a website fluidly, but could be huge showstoppers to someone who has no other options or someone with a disability. Another important thing to consider is that when we're talking about disability, we're not just talking about people who permanently have disabilities. There are other kinds of ways in which you might experience what it might be like to use a computer or modern device in the way a disabled person might use. For instance, you could be blind medically and permanently, or you could also have temporarily have cataract injuries or just have had surgeries, or you could be distracted. You could be deaf, you could have an ear infection which limits your ability to hear, or you could be a bartender in a busy bar. All these things, particularly the things on the two right columns, give you windows into what it might be like to have a disability and to experience the world that way. But it's very important as we consider these types of users, these personas, as Microsoft calls them, that we don't start to believe that someone who has an arm injury will understand what it's like to live in the world as someone who has one arm, or someone who has a temporary cataract injury wouldn't know what it's like to be blind. Oops, I jumped to the end of this slide deck. The end key is right next to the next key. Let's go backwards. There we go. And as we consider all these users, all these reasons why this is really important, we need to think about the how, of course. We need to start by using valid semantic HTML. We need to always include alts on our images, some things that we've probably gotten on you before here at the Collab Lab. We need to make sure that we're using ARIA if necessary and never if it's not necessary. We need to ensure that as much content as possible is usable by the keyboard. We need to make sure that tab ordering makes sense. We need to make sure that we use sufficient color contrast. We want to avoid using only color. These are just some basic examples. And as my friend Uriama at the New York Times says, the best ARIA is no ARIA at all. Keep that in mind, that if you're reaching for ARIA, you might actually be doing something that could be done simply another way. This doesn't mean that ARIA is bad, of course, but you want to prove all other options are not useful before you reach for ARIA. And one thing that's not listed in this slide that I want to add, the number one most important how to make your websites accessible for people with disabilities is to test with people with disabilities who would be using your site using a certain assistive technology, because the authentic feedback is the only thing that can really tell you what the experience is like. It is the most valuable source of truth. The rest of this is secondary, and it's usually the easier option because we don't always have access to someone who's willing to test our sites. It's also important that when you do bring on someone who has a disability, that you pay them appropriately for their time like you pay any other researcher or expert. There are other ways that you can identify issues without these users, of course. First of all, we have automated tools such as Axe or Accessibility Insights. And then again, we go back to actual testers such as people who work with Fable Tech Labs. Now, the first two things are the cheapest. They're the things that your organization will likely start with. They're the things that you'll have the most access to. And number 3 is the one that takes the most synchronous time and the most money, but it gives the most valuable feedback. Before I go into a very brief demo that kind of just shows off a bit of insights, do we have any questions about any of the stuff that I've just talked about? And I will leave time at the end for just us to have a discussion if everyone's okay with that. But I want to make sure that we're all on the same page so far. No questions? Cool. I also can't see anyone shaking your head or nodding. So if you want to talk, just interrupt me. Just come off mute. It's totally fine. All right. I am realizing in real time that I might have to unshare and reshare my screen to do the demo that I want to do because the extension I wanted to use is not installed in Firefox. It's always something. Let me double check that I can do this. Now, what I'm going to do, yeah, I'm going to have to unshare and reshare. That's fine. I'm going to go through a website using the Microsoft Accessibility Insights tool, which we mentioned in one of the slides. And I'm going to talk, and I'm going to show one of the cool things it allows you to do. And maybe if we have a bit more time, I'm going to sort of talk about their guided walkthrough experience, which is pretty cool. Just give me 1 second to, again, fight with my technology. I appreciate your patience. Maybe do a bit of dance as you imagine I'm putting maybe music on, hold music while I get this done. Let's see. Everything happens to break at once. It's very cool, very fun. Again, I apologize. This should have been done, but it wasn't. And it just keeps happening. Everything keeps happening. All right, I'm almost there. Let's see. So as I go to add this extension, I realized that my browser is being hit by a bug that is dedicated to this. It is part of my, it's part of a hardware failure. So I can't do anything about it. So I have to change my plans entirely again. Let's just see if we can get through this, y'all. We'll figure it out. For those of you who don't know, there's a very fun bug in some new Mac OS computers where the graphics card just starts freaking out and starts rendering things in a very strange way. And so I went to use the Insights extension, and it's doing fun colors. Maybe I'll be able to show you in a sec when I can unshare and reshare my screen. All right. So let us try this again. Going to reshare in just a moment. All right. So if everyone says a quick prayer to demo gods, let's see. Aha. All right, so we should see dominoes.com. Yes, everyone, cool?
Yep.
Okay, great. Now I'm going to try running Insights and let's just see what happens. So Insights is an extension that lives in the top bar. It'll look the same across Chrome and Edge, but I think right now Insights only works on Chrome or Edge because they share the Chromium browser source code. You click on it, you agree to some telemetry, or you choose not to. You get this really cool menu where you have some options. The first one, the one that I'm going to start with, is a fast pass, which runs 2 simple tests and shows you the low-hanging fruit, if you will. I'm going to click that. I picked Domino's, by the way, because Domino's has been previously sued for their failure to support disabled customers. And so I want to kind of see how they're doing, see if they've made any improvements. And I'm going to unshare and reshare one more time so you can actually see the pop-up that comes in. Let's see. I'm so used to giving demos like this in a physical environment where I have a projector and it just all goes to one place. I remember when we can go outside, it was fun. All right, let's see. So we should see the entire desktop this time. And now you can see when I clicked on the FastPass, I got this pop-up, this this window that dedicated to showing me some things that that Insights believes are wrong here. There's very minimal things, which is very good. That shows that Domino's has been making some changes. The biggest issue that Insights has found, Insights, by the way, uses the Axe tool, which you may have heard of. They've built this on top of DQ's Axe tool. And what we're seeing here is it's yelling at us about color contrast. So I can go back and I can kind of try to see, I think I have to turn it on before I see the visual helper. I can kind of try to see where the errors appear. Let's see. I think I need to turn it off and back on, maybe not. It might not show, which is fine, but you can, let's see. I think if I click on it, it's been a while since I've used this tool. Aha, I can highlight it. I go back over and you can see this, it's calling out the area where the issue appears. This often works best if you can do a side-by-side. In this case, I don't have a monitor big enough for that. But it's one way to optionally see the issues and not be overwhelmed with all the information like you might see with the Wave tool, which I'll also talk about Wave a little bit in a second. And now I can go through and click all of these, and I can kind of start seeing where they might exist. In this case, it appears that the biggest source of problems is in their footer because we have this gray on gray, which is never really ideal. But now, the thing that changed my life when I first used Insights was this tab stops thing. So I'm gonna turn on show tab stops. It's gonna take me back over here, and I'm going to sort of click in the upper left area of the nav bar. And if I press tab, it takes me to the first tabbable area that it finds on the page after where I clicked. And it's hard to see right now, but there's a little tiny circle indicating the tabbable area or the link that the image is around. I tab again, and I get a line that draws me to the next tabbable thing. I'm gonna do this a couple more times so you can kind of see how this works. We get, as I go through, it draws lines to each tabbable thing it encounters. And what this is allowing you to do is sort of visualize whether or not the keyboard tab experience will make sense, which will give you a cool insight into how a sighted keyboard user, or especially a low vision person relying on a screen reader, would experience the logic of your page. If you see any strange jumps that don't go from left to right and that skip obvious things, you know that someone would hear or see things in a way that might not help them make sense of what's going on. And you can do this all the way down the entire page until we get to the footer with all the links in it and so on. This is a quick thing you can do to test the site that you've built to make sure that you maybe haven't presented something in an awkward way, or that you don't have very strange jumps going across the page when you tab through. It's one of my favorite things to do just because I get bored and I want to see whether someone's tab order makes sense. Any questions about this? Because this is the crux of my demo. I wanted to leave mainly time to talk about the questions that you might have, whether you asked me before on Slack or if you want to just come kind of have a discussion as a group.
I have a question. Is the tab order determined by the order that it appears in the HTML, the DOM?
Yes, that's correct. Every single time, unless you do some really weird magic with JavaScript to capture the tab event, what you're getting is the Insights tool is showing us the tabbable elements as they appear in the HTML. Does that make sense?
Yep, got it.
Can you
The
think
exact
of
same.
a
Oh, go ahead.
Can you think of a reason why an element wouldn't be found like in this tabbable navigation?
Do you mean like when you think it should as a developer, but it doesn't appear here?
Yeah, like if it skipped right past this image of the $5.99 choose 2 or more pizza.
One case I see it's very common. Let's say that this image that we got for number 12, you're talking about 12, right? On the left of this grid.
Yeah.
Let's say you've got a link around an image, right? And you're like, okay, links are tabbable. We all know that. We've all agreed that happens by now. But maybe you have left off your href attribute. If you do that, your link will be technically a link, but it will not be complete or correct. And links are not tabbable until they have href attributes.
That's fascinating.
That could happen if you're maybe you're prototyping, you're scaffolding, you're doing basics, right? You're just trying to get this, to show to your boss. that you've prototyped it, and maybe you don't have real links, and you're like, okay, it's fine. I'll leave those off. But if you don't put some kind of href, the link won't work as a link.
Excellent. That's a great example.
I'm trying to think of other examples, but basically it comes down to maybe you've broken your HTML in some way that you don't quite understand, and it's really easy to miss that href thing, because HTML does not break. It just tries to fail gracefully, unlike JavaScript, which gives you problems, as we all know.
Right.
Any other questions?
What would make the tabs render in a non-intuitive order, and how would you kind of like change that around?
Ooh, have y'all heard of CSS Grid? And Flexbox, things like that? You can use Flexbox and Grid to change the visual order of something while keeping the markup structure the way it is. If the visual order of large 1199 and choose to any two or more are swapped, but they exist the way that we see them now, the tab order would have gone 12 on the right, then 13 on the left, which could be very confusing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
I'm trying to. I could have maybe coded this up if I had thought about that, but that's a good question.
EJ, to add to Jill's question, would it be best to set a specific tab order to those elements?
Yes, but also I believe you should never do that if you can avoid it.
Right.
My suggestion is to simply avoid any case where you might be visually swapping the order of elements. I'm not saying it'll never happen. One case where I myself have done this, because I've had to adjust the tab order of something, is for a checkout form that included a confirm button on the right-hand side of the form and a cancel button on the left. We wanted the user to discover cancel or confirm first, so we visually swapped the order of those two buttons and left it the way it is, and that's fine. That's something that's kind of an expected pattern for many people, and it's easier to reason about than swapping the orders of a bunch of images, let's just say. I wouldn't say that you should fall in love with that and do it all the time, but it can be done and it can be tested to prove that it's okay. But maybe, I guess my summary here is treat it like it's guilty first, then prove it's okay in research. Any other questions? Because I just want to basically be available to answer any questions you might have. Terry did ask about ARIA in React, which I do want to talk about, but I also want to make sure that we have time for the rest of our order of business for this meeting. So Stacy, I defer to you as to how much time we need.
I think that we still have plenty of time. One thing that I think is notable here is the Domino's site is so much better than it used to be. Like I would expect far more violations than this. And it's like, it's kind of nice when you get things, because I think mostly, what was it, color contrast on this right now?
Yeah.
Like, it's really fascinating when you do find a site that is like riddled with issues, because that extension does such a beautiful job of linking you right to the documentation on exactly how to fix it. So it's almost like, I like to say to people, like, if you're interested in getting into like open source, but you're kind of scared and don't know where to start by just going into open source tools that you can access like this and running the accessibility insights on it. And then if there are any kind of like accessibility issues, it'll tell you right there in the extension exactly how to fix it. And so you can like spin up a fix for that and start contributing in kind of an easier to enter way.
Exactly, and thank you for bringing that up, because I wanted to talk about the other way you can use insights, which is super, super, super cool. I'm going to close the report that it gave me, and it's going to, I'm going to refresh, and I'm going to go back into insights, and I'm going to click on assessment. Now, what this does is run FastPass, but also there's more. It invites you to go through a complete audit with prompts that instruct you to make certain decisions. Now, this overview kind of explains what it was able to check automatically. And then you go into, let's just say, headings, and it invites you to consider all of these things when you are going through looking at your own work. So it prompts you, it gives you some things that's basically some success criteria, and you it points out the elements on your page that fall under this category. So it's showing me all the headings, and it's saying, does this heading pass or fail the criteria set above here in how to test? And this exists for all kinds of things that Insights sees as important to test. Images, if we go here, we go to text alternative, and it's going to remind us that images on our page have accessible names, and which is also another way to say text alternatives or alt text. And we must say, yes, this has it, yes, this has it, or no, this is missing. And when we get through all of this, at the very end, we get a full report that we can export and show to our team to have a detailed breakdown of what we're doing well and what we're doing poorly. It's kind of like having a subject matter expert hold your hand while you're used to testing for accessibility on your own. The kinds of things that are asked here by Insights are the things that I do in my head all the time, and they are explained so well that I often refer to them just to make sure that I'm not missing something when I'm auditing my own work, just because it's so easy to forget things.
Yeah, I love that. And I think too, like, you can get to a place with knowledge of any kind, like EJ is saying, by actually reviewing these things and walking through this. And like, if you are working on a tool and you noticed one of these accessibility issues, like read why and read what, exact, I don't even know what you would call them, the pages in the WA.
Yeah, I get you.
Like, like the number, like 3.1 of WAG, like go in there and like cite those things and kind of learn why they are important and include those in your PR descriptions and stuff, because it shows like this is like a legitimate thing that we need to fix and is very important. So I love
to your
that.
point, Stacy, I've been that person before. I've opened issues with open source projects that have never heard of me before in their lives, but I said, hey, this is an important thing I'd like to help you fix. Here's some receipts.
Yeah, exactly. I love the receipt.
And then they were like, yeah, why don't you do that? And I said, yeah, sure, I will. And then I turned around and I gave them a PR.
I love it. It's like such a buttoned up PR every time I see like something like that and they're like one of those receipts. I'm like, oh, you know your stuff. Okay.
Yeah, this is just also a matter of etiquette for open source software. We all hope that people will be welcoming and that they'll be amenable to the idea that someone comes in and has ideas. But just to make sure that you're received well, it helps to have a binder full of information when you come with a request.
Absolutely. One thing, I don't know if y'all have covered this in any of your previous work at Collab yet, but EJ, could you tell us more about using alt on images, like when you do and don't need it, when it might just be like an empty string, etc.
Okay.
I feel like that's kind of a stumbling block for early career engineers sometimes.
That's a good question. So the basic information here is that alt text helps make sure that screen readers will discover images when they're going through a page, when they're looking at the contents. Now, if you don't provide an alt attribute at all, the browser will just report it as an image and not explain it at all. So that means that the user will discover it's there, but be told nothing about it. If you do provide an alt attribute and the string is empty, the AT, such as voiceover, or let's say drag and dictation or whatever else, will ignore the image altogether as if it's not there. That's considered making it decorative. So it's just a piece of furniture that helps the room look nice, or better said, it's wallpaper. It's not important. So the distinction between decorative and a let's say meaningful image, a content image, is this image important to knowing what the meaning of your content is? If it is, you must describe it. If it's just a star that kind of hangs in the background of your page, it can be decorative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. That's like perfectly helpful. So like if it is like wallpaper, just like a background image or whatever, screen reader users don't need to know about that. It doesn't help them. It's just kind of extra noise. And if you've listened to a screen reader, you know that you don't want any extra noise that is not valuable to you.
Exactly.
So yeah, use those empty quotes in that case. And another like just little tip thing too is when you're creating those alt texts, you don't need to dictate that it's an image or a photo or
Mhm.
a picture of, or
Mhm.
whatever, you just say what it is. So
Mhm.
you'll see that a lot, is like picture of a chair. It's like, just say chair.
Yep. The craft of writing good alt text is a lesson in itself. But as some basic rules, you want to avoid using the word photo or graphic or image, because the let's just again use VoiceOver as an example. VoiceOver will say to the user image, then describe, right? Or they'll describe and say it's an image. So you won't need to tell them that, because the tool will tell them that. Just like it'll say, this is a button, this is a link. It'll say this is an image. So that's handled for you. You want to be helpful but succinct. Imagine that maybe you're telling a story to a friend and you want to describe a scene that you encountered. How would you, briefly explain to them, like paint them a picture? Do that. Paint the picture. You don't need to over-explain. There are times and places for longer descriptions, but for the purposes of an image, you want to give a quick and useful description of whatever's in the image that it is very important. Any other questions? On that note, Stacy, how much time do you think we have in case you'd like me to move on, or us to move on as a group?
Let's start moving on as a group, just so we can have some good discussion around like how we want to spend the last week.
Good point. Let's do that. Thank you all for letting me take you on this journey. I'm always available for questions, both for the rest of this week and afterwards, so feel free to hit me up.
Such an amazing journey. I love it. And I've said this time and time again, we are so fortunate that EJ is one of our mentors of this group, because they're very knowledgeable when it comes to accessibility at large. So if you have questions, do drop them, because we can all learn from any of these questions asked. So
Thank
there
you,
are no bad questions.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, EJ. Okay, so let me see. I will share my screen. And just like EJ, I'm like, oh shoot, I should make sure things are pulled up, right?
Learn from our mistakes, everyone. This is your opportunity. Don't be us. Be better than us.
Be prepared. Okay, so great job going off the beaten path last week and tackling things so smoothly. I was a little worried going into the week. I was like, well, we haven't done this before. What's gonna happen? Like, is this gonna be feasible? Is it gonna fit into the 5 hours a week? So do you all think that last week fit into the 5 hours just like you would expect, or was it more or less? What was that kind of like for you?
If it was more, tell us. Defend your time. Tell us
Yeah, totally.
we need to be nicer to you next time. We will hear it.
I think for our issue, this one was good within the 5 hours.
Okay.
And we actually squeezed in a couple extra stuff, so that worked.
Nice. Okay, good. I love it when we can scope things well. So great job. And I'm assuming since the other team's not saying anything, it fit in 5 hours-ish, give or take. Or you're like, we weren't paying attention at all, so I don't know. That's my life.
I think for the most part, it fit in the 5 hours. I think that, like we said, it was more just like trying to figure out best ways to sort. So that maybe took a little bit more time, but I think actually implementing things fit within that 5 hours.
But Eden, you bring up such a good point, is that like when you're developing, and this will like bite you time and time again throughout your career, especially if you decide to freelance or something, figuring that out and investigating and trying those things and spinning your wheels counts. Like that time totally counts, because I think a lot of us think like you were saying, like, well, the time I spent implementing it went really fast. And it's like, you still spent the other time, and that time is still so incredibly valuable. So do just now at Collab Lab and going forward, that time is so precious. Count it all. Even if it's like, even if you feel like it's your fault in some way, like, well, I probably didn't need to spend this much time doing this one thing. It's like, you still did, and that's still totally valid. So very good to know though. Protect your time, it is so precious. Okay. Very good though, very good work. This next week, it looks like the things that we need to do are get the item page up. So as a user, you want to be able to click an item and see all the details of that item so that you can understand your purchases better. And then a bunch of styling. And the app already looks beautiful. And I kind of want to just like as a whole team brainstorm what we want to do next week. But somebody will definitely want to, like one of the teams will definitely want to take that image page. And then like in my head, a way that it could go is that the other team starts kind of brainstorming, putting together a style guide and getting style implemented. And then when the item page wraps, because it's really just creating a new page and putting data that you already have on it. So it should go pretty fast. And you guys have done brilliant work, and I can tell you know what you're doing. So given your skill set now and your familiarity with the app, it should go pretty quick. When you get done with that issue, then just all kind of mob on styling, like polishing it all up together. What are you all thinking? Because again, we just have the item details one, and then all these other ones are styling, except for extra one that we've added throughout the project. So what are your thoughts? What are your ideas? What do you want to work on in this final week?
Well, actually, yesterday when we merged, we took that time to create the style guide. So we actually been on like for a couple hours kind of figure this out.
Dang, whoa, you guys are so on top of things. So the style guide's already done.
Yes.
And like, but none of the styles, are the styles that you picked implemented already, or you still need to apply those?
Yeah, we haven't applied anything. We were just, I guess maybe we expected it was gonna be like, you know, split the issues 50-50, and then since we have an idea, work on them.
Yeah.
And I think we left it like one or two things kind of open for just however you feel, whoever's assigned to it.
Okay.
But overall, we have like a color scheme, font, layout.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. Good for y'all. Okay, so this is what I'm thinking then. Since it sounds like you're all definitely interested in like polishing it up and styling it, having like a good polished final product. I'm thinking one of the pairs wraps up the item page. Like just go in there, tackle that item page. We'll get it merged like before midweek. And then after that, that branch will be gone. We'll merge it in with whoever started on styling. And then I'm thinking you all can just assign each other, like you work on the welcome page, you work on the item page. And because you have the style guide, you can all kind of work on the same branch, because there will be styling that you can sort of reuse that other people are putting in place. So you're not all having to like, you know, put those fonts in every time or whatever. If you can just kind of like be branching off of one branch, that could work. Does that make sense? Do you guys have other ideas? EJ, Jill, do you all have thoughts on that?
I would love to see y'all take point on this and decide for yourselves what would be the best way forward. So
Ooh,
I will
I
support
love
you
it.
and help you work on your ideas, but I don't want to present anything at this time.
I love it. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's kind of, I think it is very appropriate for like the last week to really, you know, take charge and own this project, and like, because that's where it's going to be going forward. So I think that's a cool idea if everyone is happy with that. It sounds like you've already kind of reached that place as well.
The only bit of advice I'd like to give is that you want to plan this week in a way that will set you up also for working on this thing in the future, so that you have ideas that you can keep executing on if you choose to in your free time.
I love that. That's another thought that I was having about like how we could kind of manage this last week if things got wrapped up really fast or something. It could be a totally amazing use of your time to all four of you get on a call together and just kind of brainstorm like what your next sprint would look like, or what your next, you know, version might look like what things do you want to refactor, what, you know, new features maybe do you have in mind, what bugs are there, and like make sure they're all documented in GitHub as issues, so that again, like when Collab wraps, when this cohort like ends after next week, this app is still yours. This app's still yours to, you know, polish and do with what you want, you know, like fork it and completely redo any, you know, it's yours to do whatever. So if you can get together and use all of your brain power to find some direction for it, it'll make it all that much easier if you are like, oh, I do want to go pick off just an issue next weekend or whatever. it'll be ready.
One other thing you can use your time together to plan out, I think, would be public blog posts you could make so that you share stories of the things you've worked on. Because you want to have these things both to narrate in interviews when working with prospective teams and to just show off and say, please read this diary to see all the cool work I've done. Because that's the kind of stuff that separates a junior who has trouble getting hired from someone who will get hired. And I don't believe that that kind of thing should be necessary, but unfortunately it is. And if you can show your receipts, that will help you to secure your next step in your career.
I love that. One thing that I see a lot in portfolios that I look at that I think is really impressive is when people use either READMEs or other like markdown files inside their repo to say like things that they learned. So like, for example, the trying to sort and using that old package, like, you know, we spun our wheels on this and then realized that it's probably not maintained because the dates don't add up. So going forward, we might try and refactor it so that we're not using that package at all. Like things like that. It's like, oh, this really shows that they like dug in and learned and have a path forward. Like that's impressive to me. So, you know,
on that note, I'm just kind of riffing off of Stacy apparently today. On that note, one really cool thing that I like to see in juniors is when they know there's an issue that they cannot close yet or have not closed yet. So if you keep a tab of your known issues, that will make it seem like you're on top of stuff rather than that you have maybe just missed something.
Agree with that completely. So with all that being said, you've got these issues here. I put the pairs in the channel. And again, if you want to diverge from that at all too, you don't necessarily have to go with these pairs. You could all just work together. Like if you all four of you just want to like hop on a call and bust out the add items page and review it all together and then send it to the mentors for final review, then it's done and you can all move on to styling. You can do that too. We'll leave it up to you. And if you do this all on a call, do that. Like if you decide what direction you want to take, or you can do it asynchronously and just communicate in a thread in the channel, but just make sure that it's in the channel so that we can all kind of follow along and know the plan. But I guess I'd encourage you to sort of like by the end of today or end of day tomorrow, maybe even have like a solid plan about how the week will go. Does that sound reasonable? Yeah.
And if y'all need help brainstorming and getting plans together, I'll be happy to help project manage that and help you get ideas jotted down and agreed upon. I'll be here for the rest of the evening working on cleaning up my digital life a little bit. So I'll be at my computer. just say hi.
Yeah, and we can even like use the office hours or whatever this week too. Like even if you wanted to brainstorm or like just use it as a working session to like get some GitHub issues created or whatever, like we can, you know, hack on that too. Just a big group collab week. I'm super stoked about this idea. This is again like kind of off the beaten path of Collab, and I feel like this team in particular is sort of like trailblazing, and I'm really excited about it.
And the cool thing for us at the Collab Lab is we get to learn from what went well here and maybe apply these things to the next cohorts, because maybe we like this model. Maybe we want to say that in the future we'll stop and intentionally have a refactoring week.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I love it. Or like last week, you know, mentors don't organize anything. The whole team just does it based on what they learned over the last 7 weeks. I love that idea. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to stop my screen share. I'm not going to assign anything here.
I do want to plan office hours while we're all here together.
Yep.
Now, I can't remember, Stacy, did we assign office hours to me this weekend? We had a last minute change.
I don't know. It looks like in the document, it said Miles is office hours this week, I think. So.
And with Miles being away, I think that I can take them. I can totally do that. I just want to make sure that it actually was me. Okay, cool. Let's hang out. Now, y'all, when would be the absolute best time for y'all? Because I am off for the week of Thanksgiving, and I can build my life around yours.
That's exciting.
Taking all votes. Alex, go ahead.
I think we always do Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern time, but I actually can't make that this week.
That's totally fine. Is there a time that you could make?
I can do after 8 p.m. on Tuesday, which is 5 p.m. your time.
That works just fine for me.
Or-
And also, I think with Eden, I believe your schedule would make 2 p.m. difficult anyway, right?
Yeah. So I'm able to meet anytime after 6 p.m. on Tuesday. So, or 6 p.m. CT.
So 5 p.m. my time would still work for you?
Yeah.
So then it sounds like 5 p.m. Since we did that last week, 5 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday might be the time. Does that not work for anybody?
It doesn't work for me, but I'm not important here, so
Stacy, no.
it's fine. It's okay. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are usually my good days, but it's weird because it's Thanksgiving week. So I can see if I can find childcare actually, and I'll see if I can still show up to Tuesday at 5 p.m.
I mean, we don't mind if you have babies in the background. It's totally okay.
Screaming at you.
It's not even
Yeah,
a thing.
okay. I might do
I mean,
that
look at
then.
they're just snoozing, right? It's fine.
Yeah, that one's asleep. That one's watching Pinkalicious.
As you do. Gabby and Alex, does Tuesday 5 p.m. Pacific work for you? Or sorry, not Alex, Terry. Names are hard. Happy Sunday, everybody.
Cool.
Yep, it's good.
Cool.
Tuesday,
And
5 p.m. Pacific.
cool. We'll do that. We will be back here to do that for sure. In the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful evening. I will be around organizing my life, so feel free to DM me with questions. And also, I want to point out that Stacy put a link to Weston Thayer's talk on assistive technology in the Slack channel. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend that you take the time to watch it. It's very informative, very good. And thank you again for dealing with me during my very sloppy presentation. I had a lot of fun.
It's
We
brilliant.
got there together.
Brilliant. So good. Okay, and I will put kind of a recap of like, I say the plan, but I'm going to basically put a recap saying like the team's going to figure it out. And this video will go into Slack as soon as it is processed.
All right, have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye,
you. Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.